So, when you're shopping for property managers, you should be asking what's your vacancy loss, not occupancy rate. What's your vacancy loss rate? What's your turnover rate? Our turnover rate's under 15%, which is fantastic. And then also what's your delinquency rate on any given day?
Today's guest, Dustin Nulf. I met Dustin, gosh, the last time I remember meeting you, and probably the first time, not the last time, the first time, and I don't know if you'll remember this. I did a flip up on Wabash in Carnegie, and it was with my partner at the time, Blaine Johnson, and you had showed it. And I think you might have you'd brought the offer in too. I'm not sure, but that's the first time I got to meet you.
Yeah, possibly. I worked with a lot of investors back then, and I know you were flipping properties.
That's probably about 15 years ago.
Yeah, it was 15 years. It was 2008 was when I actually started selling real estate.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to your roots. You graduated high school in 97.
Yep.
Did you go locally? Were you local boy?
No, I'm from DuBois, PA.
Okay.
So I went to DuBois Central Christian at the time. It's now Central Catholic again. Born and raised in Brockway for a while, and I moved to DuBois when I was about 12 years old and started attending the private school there. Graduated from there with not the best grades and went to Pitt. Somehow got into Pitt. I had good SAT scores though, so I got into Pitt and went originally for pre-law. I got accepted for pre-law. I went to my first law class and dropped out. I was like, there's no way I'm doing this. And then
you knew what you didn't want to do.
Well, right? Yeah. And then, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I've always liked thinking about how people think and trying to figure people out. So I ended up going for psychology more because I liked it than I wanted to get a career in it. And, in my 44 years of life, I spent maybe 2.5 years actually working in a psychology field in social work. The rest of it's been either restaurant or real estate.
That's something, right?
Yeah.
College isn't always the right choice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be who you are today if you did it.
Well, yeah, that's what I figured. Had a lot of fun too.
All right. So you went to Pitt, graduated there in 2001 with a psychology degree. And then kind of hazy from then. Well, let's go even back further because a lot of folks who come on and meet with me and they're entrepreneurs, everyone who's an entrepreneur has started early. Like they weren't just jerking around at home.
Yeah.
Like you were cutting grass and washing dishes at 14, cutting grass at 12, worked at Taco Bell. I mean, you were a busy guy.
Yeah. And I remember there was 1 year that I really wanted a BB gun. And I was like 10, right? And I really wanted a BB gun. And I came up with a plan where I was going to make real Christmas wreaths for Christmas. And I went around and door knocked and sold them. And that's how I raised money to buy the BB guns. So that was like one of my first door-to-door sales, right?
Well, you had a need, you had a want,
right?
And you went out and got it.
Motivated.
That's pretty cool. There's not much difference than what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold, cold sales.
We'll get into your dreams and aspirations, but you're doing what you do to reach those dreams and aspirations. And hopefully you're enjoying the journey. That's the problem. I have the challenge is just enjoy the process because that's really the gold nugget.
Right.
It's not the rain. It's not the pot at the end of the rainbow.
Right. Usually when you reach that goal, then it's like, well, reaching that goal was not that great. It's like, but I learned a lot on the way and it was fun getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You were unemployed at one point, went back to Taco Bell even after you graduated. You were clinically depressed and drunk. So were you literally a drunk or just you were partying drunk every Friday?
I was bad. So I drank from the moment I was like up and functioning until I went to bed a lot of days. So, back then I was, I got out of college, worked in the restaurant industry. I want to be a musician. Like that was my main goal. And, ultimately the bands failed. You're a musician. I don't know if you're ever in a band, but there's a lot of big egos and altered motivations. My motivation was to be successful and make money doing what I loved. And I think you know, a lot of my bandmates wanted free beer and women. You know, I wanted to make money doing it so I could do what I loved and make money doing it. And I was really depressed when that fell through, right? Like I knew that it fell through and I knew that I was going to have to do something else. And I had, you know, been substance abuse problems from even before I was 18 years old. And at that point I was just, you know, unemployed, depressed, broke. And I knew that I could get a job at Taco Bell because that's where I worked when I was 16. I knew if I showed up and filled out an application, they'd be like, "Oh, we're hiring."
You could always count on Taco Bell.
Right. And I like tacos, so so I went there and I got hired, and I thought, man, I'm only going to be here for 2 weeks. I'll find another job, get out of here, and like the stars aligned, right? Like I was at the bottom. They came in, they fired the GM, they put a new GM in. He was just highly motivated, super smart. He was one of the only people that I ever worked for as an employee where I thought, man, this guy's smarter than me. Like he knows what he's doing. And I really respected that. And
this guy knows tacos.
Yeah. Well, he was a businessman. And that was what, like, I didn't expect to find a
Right.
real businessman running a taco.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
And he taught me how to run the business. He invested in real estate. He had a import export business. He sold clothing. And then he also had a catering business, and he was running all of that while he was running this Taco Bell.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he took me under his wing. He taught me how to, you know, run a business, how to run a restaurant. And then I was like the hitman. They would go out and fire a GM. They'd put me in. I would hire a whole bunch of new staff, teach them all. They'd bring the new GM, and then I'd move on to the next restaurant. And I was doing that for years, for a while too. And that was where I really, like, I learned that I liked running businesses. So, you know, ultimately, long story short, I got tired of kind of the corporate structure. Like I hit a ceiling, and I knew I wasn't going to get beyond that ceiling without schmoozing and doing all that sort of stuff. And I thought, man, I'm working like 80 hours a week. I'm making maybe 50 grand a year at most. And I enjoyed doing it. But if I were working 80 hours a week running my own business, I'd make a whole lot more money than 50 grand a year, I bet. So I started looking for avenues to make more money and own my own business and have like very low overhead because I was broke. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, oh, you know, this guy bought a property with somebody else's money and then sold it before he even owned it and made like 40 grand. I was like, wow, that's like, if you can make that kind of money with real estate, I need to get in real estate. So that was what brought me to, like, investing is what I wanted to do. I didn't get into real estate because I wanted to do sales. I want to be an investor.
That's really cool. I mean, you're at rock bottom.
Yeah. And you know, my advice for somebody who's at rock bottom or thinks they are is like, just keep going, because where you're at right now, you're there for a reason. And it's not because you should be giving up, you know? And if I would have gave up, you know, that would have been the end of it. But I kept going, and I ended up, it was like literally on the other side of the bottom was this way to the top.
And you have a wife and child or children?
Yeah, I have a wife and 2 kids.
Okay.
Wyatt's 8 right now. Lila's 5. My wife and I have been together since 2008. That was like the change in my life, right? Like I decided I'm going to get out of the restaurant industry. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to get into real estate. Found a wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, but like, you know, it was like everything just kind of lined up at the same year, same time frame.
And I didn't know about the musician part. So what did you guys play, and what, like, music wise, and what was your instrument?
I was a fan of guitar. I learned to play guitar, bass, keyboard, harmonica a little bit, banjo a little bit. At the time back, you know, when I recently graduated college, I was in I would call it like a rock jam band type thing. It was alternative rock. I don't know. It was like more like a Blind Melon. Like we were all very big fans of Blind Melon, and Blind Melon was like a hippie grunge rock band from the 90s that, like, they didn't really fit in with all the other grunge stuff that was going on, but they had like a lot of big stuff. They were really like big fan cult following. So that's the type of music I played then. I ended up playing math rock for a little bit, which is like very oriented around the time signatures and time signature changes. And then we played, I was in a like emo punk grunge band for a little while too.
Interesting.
So,
Well, I was in a band and then I played maybe 12 gigs. So we weren't really serious.
yeah.
And I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it that much. So I just stopped because it wasn't my passion. I enjoyed it. It was fun. For you, it was a passion, but it became a catalyst to a downward spiral because you weren't getting there where you needed to get to. And now here you are again. Now you're a businessman. And Dustin you're an agent at EXP. Or are you the owner of EXP? Are you a partner? How are you situated there?
Associate broker. So associate broker for EXP. And then I own a management company. And it was like, probably similar to your story. Like I started the management company because I had rental properties and I couldn't manage them myself anymore. And it was either hire a management company or start a management company. And I'm a control freak. So I started a management company. So that I am an owner of that. It is a brokerage, but I'm not the broker of that. So, yeah, those are my two major ventures outside of just investing in real estate.
Yeah. Dustin has a team at EXP. So his sales team, buyer's agent, sales agent, however that's structured. He has a team. You've had a team for a while. I know that.
Yeah, at least 10 years.
And Nulf Management Services, which they manage roughly 350 units. They have 22 employees. They do all of their own in-house repairs. Like we do our own repairs here, but we have a separate company called Rent Ready Rehab, and we sub most of it out. We only have one employee.
Yeah.
And we have good subs, and it's guys we've used for some of them 20, 22 years. If you could do it all over again, would you start a management company or would you just grow your sales team?
Honestly, well, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have followed the same path. Like you think about like your mindset when a decade ago, your mindset, if you're growing, your mindset was different a decade ago than it is now. So back then it was just like, it seemed like this was the thing, that was the path to take. With my mindset now, I probably would have just focused more on running like my own sales and fueling my investment properties and growing that management side and managing for myself for the most part. So that's what I'm trying to get back to now is I would rather be the largest landlord that we manage for. Like I want to have a couple hundred properties that we manage that I own because I'm the easiest landlord for our people to work for, right? Because I'm in the office every day. All they have to say is, Dustin, should I do this? Yeah, sure. Go ahead. It's very difficult, especially scattered site. Like, I don't know how many scattered site you guys got.
A lot. But yeah,
you got like 70, 80 landlords and 300 units. And it's like, everybody wants to tell you how to do it. And it's like, your way of managing 5 is not our way of managing 350. Like we have to do it this way.
I always tell potential folks who want to start a management company because they manage their own. And my situation mirrors yours. I started the company because I didn't want anybody else managing it. I didn't see anybody good enough. So, okay, let's just start my own company, right? And like you said, mindset changes. You're absolutely right. So 22 years ago, I was a different mindset. I could conquer the world. Now, I can still conquer the world, but I know what lane I need to stay in. Again, if I could do it all over again, I would have focused more on sales because it's highly profitable.
Oh, yeah.
It can be much less liability and headache. And just growing the long-term wealth, the portfolio.
Yeah. I like the amount of money you can make sales. I don't know where you guys are at with your brokers, but usually like I talk to brokers and there's like this spot where it's like, you don't make any money. Like you're making a very low margin when you're running a team or you're running a brokerage when you hit this certain spot. And it's way more lucrative for you to just sell real estate. Like if you're just selling real estate on your own, you can make a lot of money. You don't have to, a lot of people don't rely on you. It's just you doing your own thing. And you can make a lot of money doing it. But the thing is, it's a rat race. And that's what I didn't like about it. It's like flipping property. I don't like flipping properties because it's a rat race. You flip a property, you sell the property, it's over. Now you don't have any money coming in until you find the next property to flip. I like passive. I've always liked the Burr method. And I like the idea of the residual income that comes out of property management. You always have, as long as you're doing your job, you got the fees coming in, right? So I like that. It's more of a predictable business. So that's really where my passion is these days. I'll work with clients every once in a while on the sales side, but it's like, clients that are buying a portfolio or usually investment type mindsets, right? Because that's where my head's at.
It is a natural progression though. The sales complement the management complements the sales, and the repairs, and it all can work harmoniously.
Yeah.
Like a band.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got exposed to real estate. The story you told, it's just funny, is you remember back in kindergarten, you had a long bus ride home and you'd look at the houses, and the architecture back then always intrigued you.
So it all started in kindergarten, and I was the first person picked up on the bus ride, and this is rural Pennsylvania.
Oh, right. You had a long bus ride.
Yeah, it was like an hour long bus ride, or at least it seemed that way back then. You're a kid and everything seems longer. But I remember I would just like sit and lean my head against the window, and I would look at the houses as we came by, and I would wonder what they look like, and then I would envision what they look like inside. And like, I wonder if that house looks like my house inside, or if that looks like the old house. And I always like to take a look at the style of the homes and the architecture, and I always appreciated people that had really nicely kept lawns and things like that. Like, I always liked the aesthetic appeal of real estate. And that's just my earliest memory. Like one of my memories of like childhood is looking at houses that, as the bus drove me to school. So that was like when it started. And then like my first, quote unquote broker deal was when we were thinking about moving into the city of DuBois. Like, it's not a real big city. It's like barely a city, but I was going to that private school, and it was farther away than the other school that I was at previously. And I said, why don't we move to DuBois and, work to convince my family to move to DuBois. And then it was like, well, we don't know what property we should buy or where we should be. And my uncle had mentioned at one point, we used to stay at my uncle's house after school because it was real close to the school. And he had mentioned that he wanted to sell his house. And I said, Mom, why don't you buy Kenny's house? Oh, that might be a good idea. And that was it. They sold their house. They bought Kenny's house. Kenny went and bought another house, and now we live next to the school. So that was my first brokerage deal, right?
Who did the paperwork for that? Did you help with that with crayons and maybe markers?
I didn't. I didn't get paid on that either, but my mom reminds me that I probably owe her a whole lot than a commission check, more than a commission check. So.
And your parents, you don't come from like a super poor family. You don't come from an extremely rich family. You say middle class. Your mom and dad worked at a glass factory.
Yeah, that's where they met, was at the local glass factory. That was, the place to work in DuBois Brockway area. It was Brockway Glass at some point. I don't know what it's called now, but I think my mom's dad was a supervisor there at the time, and that's where my parents met. My dad worked there pretty much his whole life up until I think he hired it somewhere around 65, 67, something like that. So, working class factory. I went to Brockway Glass to get a tour of it during like bring your kid to work day. And it was like, they had like a guided tour because it wasn't safe for a kid to just be walking around this factory. Right. And it was, super hot in there, and there was melted glass everywhere. And it was just like, there's no way I want to work here. And that was like motivation to like, I got to find something else other than this because this is crazy. And, my dad wasn't happy a lot of times. He'd come home and complain about his supervisors, and he would work. There were some times where like months I didn't see him because he was working double shifts and, to make money for the family. And I just knew that wasn't where I wanted to be when I was, of career age, right?
Yeah, you were exposed to that, and he said, "Okay, I know what I don't want to do."
Right.
Work in the glass factory.
Yeah,
probably any factory at that point.
Yeah, and it's been, process of elimination is how I've moved through life. Is like, I know I don't want to do these, so why don't I try this? And through trial and error, I ended up here.
Yeah, I think you just have to do something. How many people know what they want to do when they're 18? So you have some short-term goals. So we talked about, so you got some audacious goals here too. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, one's kind of aligns with mine. I have this goal. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to get there. And to be honest, I don't know if I want to pay the price to get there
Right.
because there is a price to pay.
Yeah.
And I realize that now. And that's what I was talking about. Like when you're older, you stay in your lane because I can't expend too much energy. Only so many days left, only so many hours in the day. Got to stay in my lane,
Yeah.
But you can get really good staying in that lane. That's why I do see a lot of entrepreneurs, myself included, just run after every shiny object and try to do everything. Just man, stay in your lane. You can kill it in your lane. You don't have to be Elon Musk. You don't have to be that guy.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the older I get, the more I think about that. And I think that is, part of it is like you realize that you only have so much time on this planet. And, back when I was in my 20s, I worked 80 to 100 hours a week. And that was just because it was like I was so motivated to do it. And then you think about it and it's like, man, I worked that much, but I wasn't really getting as much done. You thought you were doing important stuff and it wasn't that important. So, now I really try to prioritize and I try to make sure that my day is done by, 4 p.m. or so. And
Well,
I
I
can
think
get home. And,
having a family does kind of helps prioritize,
Yeah.
Just like an automatic thing that, oh, now I have kids and that's more important.
Yeah.
It makes you a better businessman because maybe you can be more focused at work and take that time more seriously so you can have that time with your family.
Right. You got to learn to kind of shut it off. The work, there's a clock out for you, even if you're a business owner.
Yeah.
It's like you really have to clock out and be with the family when it's time to be with the family.
Now, right now, you say you own about, was it 36 units?
I'm only at 26 units. Yeah.
You parted with 12 a couple years ago.
Yep.
Was it a good time to sell? Is that why you parted with them, or were they just not good investments?
No, that was actually my business partner with the management company. We owned 12 units together. I ended up working out a deal with him and bought him out of his ownership of the management company in the end of 2020. And part of that deal was I'm going to give him the equity in those units. So I parted with 12 units. There's 2 properties that I flipped at some point. And, I don't like the flip. So it was just kind of like, it's here and I can do it. So I'm going to do it. But the rest, for the most part, I haven't sold anything beyond those units.
Flipping's not my favorite thing either. It takes a lot of time. And then unless you have systems, project managers, and you're doing more volume, it's somewhat counterproductive sometimes. In fact, a lot of times I've done a lot of flips where I've made no money. And then I think the one I made the most on was probably $40,000 in my pocket.
And there's always surprises. Like you run into surprise and that's in any project, right?
You know what the surprise is? If you get at the end of at the closing and there was no surprise.
And you get a check that actually is at or better than what you expect.
Never adds up. And I met with John Walker, who was here. He's done a lot of flips, and anybody I've talked to, contractors even, you're always over budget.
Yep.
Always.
I have had one deal in 15 years where I came in under budget. One deal. And that's the third. What was that? That's 40 properties.
You're doing a lot of rehabs now for owners and I always preface it. I said, I can almost guarantee it that this $15,000 estimate is going to be 16.5.
Yeah, we put in a 15% contingency on everything and just say, listen, if things don't go as planned, you can expect to pay this above what we're bidding.
Let's hope it's only 15%.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have 26 units. Where are they, like location wise?
I mean, I'm an opportunist, so I've got stuff all over Allegheny County. I don't have anything outside of Allegheny County right now, so I do like the Pittsburgh metro area. I am leaning more towards the suburbs than the city anymore, and it's just because of the city political climate and kind of the magistrate situation there. And so, I have stuff in Troy Hill. I have stuff in Spring Hill. So the north side of the city, Pittsburgh, in the city. I have stuff in Glassport. That's not my favorite place to buy, but it was just like it's there and the numbers work well. I have great property in Highland Park. That was one of my best buys. I bought it for $55,000 and it's a triplex. That was back, at the end of the bottom of the barrel for Highland Park. So I got it in at the right time there.
Timing is critical. Sometimes you get lucky.
Yep.
In fact, most of the times I just got lucky. I just bought, I mean, I had a lot of properties I had to sell over the years because if I didn't sell them, I wasn't going to be able to make the mortgage payment on the shitty ones I still had, which kind of sucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everybody looks back. I think every investor does and say, man, I should have kept that one. I should have kept that one. But Pittsburgh's a good, I mean, real estate is a good market. I mean, I got in 93. You bought your first property
like 2006.
Yeah. And then
look,
I'm just looking at like what I paid then and then what I paid 10 years ago. And I'm thinking, man, I'm paying too much for this. And now 10 years later, I'm like, God, darn it, I got like 50,000 equity.
Yeah, I wish I could find more like that, right?
Yeah. So I get that question posed to me all the time is when's the right time to buy? I'm like, right now.
Yeah. If you can cash flow and you can make sure that you're buying a good deal. Now that's the thing. Like, I'm not to knock bigger pockets, but like the people that go on the internet and they find like this napkin, spreadsheet to figure out your cash flow rates. A lot of those things, the cash flow is and cap rates are very specific to the area, right? If you don't know like the tax rates and the chances of being reassessed for taxes and what it's going to cost for repairs and that sort of stuff, like you can't take a blanket 10% maintenance budget and say that works for the entire country. That doesn't work for the entire country. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they'll get something from California and say, oh, those are the numbers that work. And then they bring it to Pittsburgh, and then they find out that like they're not going to be pulling in that much rent, and therefore their maintenance is going to be a bigger percentage of their expenses. So that sort of stuff, like if you buy it right, you get your equity and you make sure that you're conservative and you're going to cash flow on it even when the market turns, then buy now. Absolutely.
Yeah, it can be area specific, neighborhood, parts of the country, even property specific, because I own a duplex. I wish I owned 1,000. So it's a side by side, probably built like 1975. Mm-hmm. That's relatively new for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And it's been maintenance free, more or less. I've had to put a roof on it. I've owned it 30 years, roof, windows, but it's been compared to some of the other ones. So you have that unit. It's never really made a whole lot of money, but it's just skyrocketed in value.
Right.
Quality tenants. Awesome. I want 100 of those.
Yeah.
I'd settle for 100, not 1,000.
Right.
So, and then I have the converted old house that's 120 years old with a sandstone foundation and an old sewer line. And oh my goodness, they're ticking time bombs. Like right now I'm doing a porch on a house literally across the street here. It's cost me about $7,000. It was time. This thing was falling off. I gotta take care of my stuff. And then I have a 3-unit. I haven't touched. I was over there yesterday. I was almost embarrassed to say I was the owner.
Yeah.
I was over there Tuesday. It needs everything. It needs probably 20,000 on the outside, and each unit needs redone. And I've already been offered money for it. I'm like, you know what? No, because I'm in a position where now I don't need to sell properties that have potential upside to them. And I'm going to put probably 75 to 100,000 into the building over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's worth it. I looked at all the categories that make a good property. It's close to the bus line. It's in a good suburb of Crafton, level lot. It's got nice curb appeal. It's good rentability. Yeah. So I'm going to keep that one.
Yeah. And you're not going to be able to buy a property for 100. You know what I mean? If you got to put 100 into it, and it's, if it's paid off or whatever, you're not going to buy a property that's a triplex for $100,000. So you may as well put it into something you got and get more out of it.
All right. So now fast forwarding to today and like where you want to be, you had emailed me some of the things that, some of your goals and aspirations. You want to be at 100 units by the age 55, $10 million in net worth. And then you said, man, maybe $100 million by age 65 or something like that. I'm like, okay, this guy's reaching. this guy's reaching. So how do you plan? Like, where do you start? What's your plan? Do you have a plan, or is this just kind of a vision and a dream? Or are you like, I'm making a cognizant effort of this is what I do every day to get to that number and that result?
Yeah. So the 10 million net worth, that's been a concrete goal for 10 years. When I first got into real estate, I was 27, 28, and my goal was $1 million net worth. And that was by the age of 37, because I gave myself 10 years. I hit that goal like right on the head. And then I said, well, what's next? Well, why don't we 10X it? Because, now that I know what I'm doing, I should be able to do that. So that's where that came from. I'm going to 10X it. I'm going to do it by the time I'm 45, instead of giving me 10 years, I'll give myself 7, 8 years, something like that. So, that's looking very achievable. And I'm the type of person where, like I said, like you hit a goal and you're like, that wasn't so great. And then you set this bigger goal and you're like, well, I'm going to go strive for that. And really, like, the fun is getting there, right? Getting there. So, but I'm also old enough now to where I'm starting to think, do I really want to be, working my ass off to have $100 million in net worth, when 10 million will,
I think 10 million is a good
pay
number
for the rest of my life. Like, I don't need more than that.
Right.
So why do it? So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do that. If I do focus on the 100 million, 55 years old is going to be my time limit on that. And really, that comes down to investments, bigger investments. I'm not going to be able to do that with single family and multifamily. We're talking about business values and things like that. So,
yeah, my goal is 100 million too, but I don't really have a date on that. It's essentially like 75, and I'm 56 now, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. People ask me, why do you do it? And my answer is just because.
Yeah.
So if you can, our listeners, if you can find a really good mentor.
Yeah. And people think that it's harder to do, right? Like they think that if they approach this successful person, that this successful person is going to be like, I don't want anything to do with you. But it's like, I've gone out and said, hey, you want to learn how to do this? Like, I go out and I look for people to come in underneath me and learn and say, hey, would you like to skip all the crap that I, struggled with because I had to learn the hard way? And it's funny, the amount of people that say no, like they don't want to do it. They want to learn the hard way. And it's like, man, if I had to do it over again,
it would have probably been me who said, no,
I got this. And it's like, all right. But yeah, I had a mentor in business, right? Like in running a business and creating systems and managing people and hiring and that sort of stuff. I didn't have a mentor when it came to like real estate sales. And my mentor with investing was just books. But like, if I were to do that over again, for sure, I would have got a mentor for every piece of that, because I would be way farther ahead than I am now.
Yeah. Reading is so important, and just continually learning. I'm a kind of a podcast guy, listener, but I'm a kind of guy that has to just do it.
Yeah.
That's how I learn. I just screw it up and then, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that again, but I'll try this.
Right. I'm the same way for the most part. And then now, as I'm older, then I'll read things and I'll be like, okay, listen, this guy is worth $100 million. I'm not. Therefore, this might sound crazy to me, but I need to accept it as a fact and just do it. Like I'm starting to tell myself, that's my conversation in my head. Yeah.
You might not even have to then really like the person who's
right.
successful, but you have to respect their talents,
the fact that they got there, and whatever they did work. Right.
Well, we should also mention that, the most important thing is you have a wonderful family. You have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. And those are awesome ages, man.
Yeah.
I have a 5-year-old grandson and a 3-year-old. And it's just, we get them once a week. And as soon as I drop them off, I'm like, thank God they're gone, because they are nightmares. They're 2 boys. I had 3 daughters. And then as soon as they're gone, I'm like, man, I miss those little buggers.
Yeah. They're full of energy. And that's like that. I say they keep me, in good shape, because back before we had kids, that I was still into alcohol, and, I was letting myself go. And when we had kids, then I changed things. Right. And now I exercise, but they give me exercise whether I want it or not.
No
And
doubt.
that's one of the, the great things I love. And their mindset, a kid's mindset, they just do what, they do what they want to do, and they're so open-minded and trusting. It's a shame that we lose that when we get older.
That's so true. If you could keep that energy and that optimism and that positive attitude, and they're something. 5 and 8, it's good ages, man. So enjoy them. Now we're going to go to the last part of the podcast, which is I'm trying to help our listeners just learn from everyone on this podcast. And the question is, what's 3 to 5 things that they can take from this and use it on an everyday basis? And I'm going to read what you had sent to me, and then you can expand on those. So the top 5 things that investors should focus on when flipping, managing properties, etc. Buy it right. Number 1. And it's just more than just the purchase price. So explain that. I think we all know buy it right is buy below market value, but what entails a lot more than just the purchase price?
Well, it depends on your model and your needs, right? Like, so I've worked with investors that are like out of state. They're already rich. Like, they've got a successful business in California or whatever, and they want to buy properties in Pittsburgh. And we can't, as a salesperson, I can't just assume what they want. So I ask them, do you want cash flow, or do you want equity gain, or do you want a little bit of both? Because that's going to determine what areas we're buying in and what our goals are. So you got to know your model first, right? And if you're going to buy it right, usually that entails that you want some equity in the property when it's all said and done. But buying it right also means, are you aware of whether or not it's going to cash flow and what it's going to look like if the market shifts or if your interest rates go up or whatever? So you got to be aware of more than just the equity in that purchase. And I've seen a lot of investors come in and buy what they thought were going to be cash flowing assets, and they were going off the internet, and they were going off a blog post or something like that. And those numbers did not work in that scenario that they bought that property. And they didn't expect, like in Pittsburgh, you bought a 110-year-old house and you didn't expect the sewer line to be busted. Those sorts of things. That's what I say, by more than just equity, right?
Gotcha. You might own a house next door, which is in this neighborhood, there are literally that duplex and everything else is 100+ years old. Yep. And the house next door, I used to own a house across the street. It was a duplex, and that one, the maintenance I would have set aside for that on my calculations probably would have been double.
Right.
So that's where that spreadsheet on Bigger Pockets or whatever you're using, the spreadsheet doesn't help you.
Experience helps you with that. And that's where, if you don't have the experience, get a good mentor, or get somebody who knows what the hell they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, no doubt. And you're going to have to learn it sometimes the hard way. Is that there's no getting by the risk and hard days.
Right.
That's just part of it. But yeah, it depends on the property. Is it new? Is it old? And then you have to adjust that spreadsheet to reflect an old sewer line that could be $20,000, right. An old roof, old windows. You're in a historic district and you have to use certain size windows. It's going to be more expensive,
right?
All that. You have to factor that all in, which does not come out of a book, and it doesn't come out of that spreadsheet. That's right. Where you get someone who can help you, like Dustin, who can get you started, lead you down the right path. It's so important to get a good agent, good property manager who knows the contracting business, has been around. It's invaluable. All right. Number 2 was focus on sound properties with solid backbones and skeleton. Got it. So just expand on that.
Yeah, that one's just like, if the foundation's crumbling, you shouldn't be buying it for the most part. My old partner, he was not opposed to like foundation repairs and that sort of stuff. So I kind of learned a different mindset from him. But in my investing, if I've got foundation repairs, or if I've got like a giant retaining wall, I've looked at properties where they look great online, and then you go there and there's like a 20-foot retaining wall in the back. I stay away from those. Like a 20-foot retaining wall is going to cost you $50,000 to $70,000. Easy. And when depending on what sort of property you're buying, like that could kill any aspect of, profit.
Hey, you could be murdering on cash flow for 15 years
And then it's
the wall comes
gone.
down.
Yeah, it's gone when that wall crumbles.
Literally the wall comes
Yeah.
crumbling down. If I do buy it, it has to be an exceptionally low price,
Right.
and
Right.
probably something I'm just going to sell.
Right. Don't expect equity in it. That's if I buy something that's on a hillside or it's got a lot of steps, I don't expect equity in it. I just want cash flow. And if
Yeah.
it's not going to cash flow, I don't buy it.
And you'll sell it and it'll be someone else's headache.
Right.
All right. Number 3, focus on the long-term win, not the short term, i.e. do quality repairs, updates that are going to last, let a property go vacant before you rent it out. You'd rather wait for a quality tenant, hire professionals because time is money.
Yeah.
DIY only gets you so far.
Yeah, there's a lot to that one, right? Like vacancy and turnover are like the worst enemy of the landlord. But there are certain instances where if you go in to show a property and you got a tenant in there and you're trying to get another tenant lined up for when that tenant moves out, and the tenant you got in there is a junkie that has the place trashed, if you're showing it like that, you're going to find another junkie that has trash properties that wants to live there, because no reasonable tenant is going to want to live in that property the way it looks. So
True.
Most people don't have vision, right? So if they look in and see it like that, they think this is what this property is going to look like even after it's cleaned up. So there are some instances where you're better off letting it go vacant, doing the turnover that needs to be done so you can find a quality tenant. There are other instances where, like, I bought a property in October last year. We had it done and ready to hit the market at the end of November, but we're going on market in Pittsburgh in December trying to find a tenant. Anybody that rents properties in Pittsburgh knows that, like, the worst time you can have a vacancy is between December and February, right? So we had a very hard time. There was nobody showing up to look at the place and whatever. I just kept it vacant. I'll keep it vacant and I'll keep looking for the quality tenant. We had plenty of unqualified tenants apply, but
Yeah.
I'd rather take the vacancies so I can get a good tenant in there that's gonna pay their rent and stay for a couple years than get desperate and try to put somebody in there because I'm bleeding money or whatever. So that's another thing that comes with experience. You got enough properties, you can bleed money for a little bit and it's not going to put you under. Whereas if you only got one or two, you become more desperate when you don't have cash flow coming in.
Yeah. And I think that's where also just having your finger on the pulse and knowing what the market rents are.
Yeah. And I was wrong on that one. Like, and
Yeah.
the market shifted too. Like
Mhm.
when interest rates went up and everything, for some reason, it seems like around here, the rent rates went down between December and
Yeah.
like March.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah.
We did see that. I talked to like 4 different people and they all had different views on that, but I saw the market shift. I saw rents go down and I just, I pivoted with it. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I can't get 900 this year. I'm only getting 8.
Yep. I'd rather under rent it a little bit and find a quality tenant than
Mhm.
try to max it out and then go through the new tenant every year.
Wish I could beat that into some of my owners' heads.
Yeah.
They don't see the forest through the trees. I'm just like, we can get this rented now and next year we can raise the rent.
Right.
And we'll do that. We'll handle it. We'll get it done, but vacancies will kill you.
Yep.
You get a quality tenant who wants a property for 800 versus 1,000 in December, take it.
Yep. 1 or 2 months of vacancy just costs you that whole
Mhm.
amount of money that you're trying to get anyway.
Yep.
So
And you got a house vacant in the winter,
yeah,
potential vandalism, frozen pipes,
frozen
you name it.
pipes. Yep.
All right, number 4. It's so funny when I meet with experienced landlords and especially property managers, man, we talk the same language,
Yeah.
and you try to explain that to your owners because you just want to help them. You're like, dude, I've done this forever. And what I'm telling you right now is probably going to save you tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
Please take my advice. Some of them just don't want to take it. And I'm like,
Right.
"God darn it, I know where this goes."
What's that short-term mindset? They have the
Yeah.
short-term mindset of like, this is going to hurt right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to hurt right now, but it's going to bring in more money over 10 years, but they don't want the pain right now.
Just trying to help, man.
Yeah. We're just trying to make sure that they do the right thing.
I got a client right now who he has a property that it's the oddest property. Property's 13 feet wide.
Oh yeah.
It's in the north side, 13 feet wide. And I go inside, it's 4 bedrooms, small living room, small kitchen, this little useless room in the back. go upstairs, bathroom in the middle, 2 small bedrooms. I'm talking like the biggest bedroom's probably 10 by 11.
Yeah.
And then upstairs, bathroom middle, 2 bedrooms. And the other bedrooms are like 10 by 8 and 11 by 7, just useless. And I said, dude, listen, we need to get this cleaned up and let's sell it. The market's still good right now. Somebody's going to buy this probably for a rental, Airbnb, something like that, that you don't need. But an owner occupant's probably not going to want it because you can't even get you could not even get a queen size bed in any of the rooms.
Yeah.
But he's going to spend $80,000 rehabbing it. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. You're
tapping out, man.
Almost better trading up for something else.
Yeah, sell it. These folks are like in their 70s. I'm like, sell it. Take that equity. I'll help you find something else or put it in the stock market or somewhere else. This is not where you want it.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm trying to help you.
Well, and then a lot of times the landlord will want the market rate for a 4-bedroom, and it's like none of these are usable. It's basically a 2-bedroom. You got to price it like a 2-bedroom.
I use the term functionally obsolescent.
Right.
I think it's one of the 3 things I've learned from real estate classes.
Yeah,
that maybe 3 things.
You actually
that was one of them. And I always use the example of you'll have a driveway like this. You can't even get into the garage. You have a functionally obsolescent off-street parking and garage.
Right.
So that's what
you don't get value.
That's what appraisals call that. It's obsolete. Right. This house was a functionally obsolete 4-bedroom house.
Yeah.
All right. Number 4, reduce downtime as much as possible. Loss opportunity costs more than any other form of loss.
Yeah. So that's your basic like turnover and vacancy. You're going to be your highest form of loss usually. So what we really try to do when we're managing properties, and this comes from like me being, a perfectionist about my properties, we start showing them at least 3 months before the lease ends. So if the tenant's not renewing, we find out 3 months ahead of time, we start showing the properties. We ideally have 0 vacancy. So right now we're running under 4% vacancy for our entire portfolio. Typically we're under 3%. So like the only time we want vacancy is when it's good vacancy, right? When we got that crappy tenant that we really need them to move out and clean it up. But the downtime is also when you buy a property, if you can't get in there and start renovating it, if it needs renovation, if you can't start renovating it for a month or 2, then you've got a month or 2 of just holding costs that you're losing out on too. So in a perfect world, we would have no downtime and we would be buying the property. People start working on it the very next day. It's ready to rent when it's supposed to be ready to rent. And then you have a tenant moving in. That's kind of the ideal situation. And you want to keep that in mind. And yes, nothing's perfect. It's never going to work out in the ideal situation, but you want to know what that is so you can strive towards it.
As far as the vacancy part, let me ask you this question, because in my experience and from managing and just owning my own properties, it's rare that you get a tenant who's leaving and going to be cooperative and they're clean and neat and the property shows well. What are your thoughts there? It's
like 50 to 60% of the time that works well. And then in other instances, we're begging the tenant to clean the place up before we show up and things like that. But most of our stuff, I want to say like for the most part, yeah, we're showing it before the tenant moved out. And if we're not, we at least have the ads running 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time. So we've got leads lined up so we can do a quick turn on it.
And would you run an ad based on maybe the old pictures you had up when it was vacant?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. And we always recommend, if you got a nice property, we recommend that we get professional photographs while it's empty, or if we got a really good tenant in there and they got everything set up real nice.
It's staged nice. It actually looks better with their stuff in it.
Right. So then we'll recommend that we get professional photographs. And I always say we can use these for up to 5 years. And then that way, when this tenant's ready to move out, we're advertising based on these photos and we can start pulling in leads, whether or not we're able to actually show that property. But for the most part, we have, like I said, it's usually less than 3% vacancy. So we're doing a good job of making sure that somebody's lined up.
That's a good rate, actually. Yeah. Right now, we just looked at our numbers. We're at about 2, which is all-time low.
Yeah.
And my portfolio mirrors that too, because October, you had mentioned you bought a house in October.
Yeah.
And my late summer, early fall was horrific. I think I had 10 vacancies. And I talked to other investors and they kind of had the same thing. I'm like, oh, wow. That's what I tell owners who are looking for a management company to ask that question. That's really important, but ask it more than once and maybe talk to different people in the company, because some people don't know.
They don't even know what vacancy, like, so we measure vacancy loss due to vacancy, whereas vacancy is different, right? If it's just vacant or occupied, that doesn't tell you how much money is being lost due to vacancy. So there are instances where we'll have a tenant that wants to move out early and we tell them you have to keep paying rent until we find another tenant. In that instance, the property is vacant, but we're not losing money. The landlord's not losing money because the rent's still coming in. So we don't count that towards our vacancy loss, because vacancy loss is different than your occupancy rate. But you'll have property managers that say, well, we're 99.2% occupied. Well, that's great. How many of those tenants are paying rent? Oh, we have a 35% delinquency
That's
rate.
A good point. I like
that's different. So, you know, when you're shopping for property managers, you should be asking, what's your vacancy loss, not occupancy rate? What's your vacancy loss rate? What's your turnover rate? Our turnover rate's under 15%, which is fantastic. And then also what's your delinquency rate on any given day? Because you'll have a lot of property management companies out there that grew too quick. And that's like, we both got in this business because we saw what else was going on out there. And they grew too quick. They took on too many units and they can't keep up with those units. And they have high occupancy rates, but they have low payment rates. They have high delinquency rates.
And I referred some business to you like I have in the past. Recently, it was an area we don't cover. It's kind of a crummy area, but we cover a lot of crummy areas. But this one is just too far.
Right.
I'm not going to drive for crummy.
Yeah. So, and we're very selective.
You're like, nope, I don't handle that. But I might know a guy and he didn't want to handle it. And I really felt bad for this gentleman. And I think I have a call with him next week. I'm like, maybe I can help you, dude. I can't help you manage it, but maybe I can help you make a decision. I really feel bad. He's buying 10 units and I think he has any clue what he's getting into. And I'm like, maybe he can get out of the deal.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, you know, it might look good on a spreadsheet, but if you're buying in a really rough neighborhood, it's going to cost you way more than you're calculating on those spreadsheets.
All right. Last but not least, build a team of reliable people. Probably should be number one, honestly, right? Because team, everyone achieves more, right? Together. And you just can't do it yourself. So I always wanted to do it myself. I'm kind of like you, like kind of control freak, and man, that you limit your ceiling.
Yeah, you can't scale up if you're not relying on other people. You have to learn to rely on other people. And what gets us to become entrepreneurs is that we are do-it-yourselfers, right? But do-it-yourself will make you a millionaire. Have somebody else do it for you, that'll make you a 10 millionaire or 100 millionaire. You have to learn to leverage if you want to get beyond a certain point. And for a lot of people, it's going to be like, if you want to be a landlord, 30 to 40 units is going to be a full-time job for you. If you're running around replacing wax rings on toilets and you're painting and you're doing the turnovers and that sort of stuff, you're only going to be able to handle 30 to 40 units, and that's it. That's going to tap you out. So you're going to have to start relying on somebody else at that point if you don't want that to be your full-time job.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that either, right? I do mention that to the average investor who just wants to get started. You don't need 100 units.
Yeah.
You can have 40. You can have 15. You can have 10 really good quality units that are rent for $2,000 a month that are worth $300,000 each. That's not bad either. Mm-hmm. And you can do it yourself. Just know that if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to limit how far you can get. And if you're okay with that and you only want to be worth 5 million or 10 million and be comfortable, nothing wrong with that. It's better than doing nothing with your money. Do something with it. Mm-hmm. You know, be prepared to work hard, be prepared to have a huge learning curve, but also reap the benefits of long-term wealth and just the growth of your portfolio over time.
And that's, you know, I started with nothing. Like I leveraged a credit card to buy one of my first investment properties. I leveraged a home equity line of credit to buy the first one, actually. And then it was a credit card to buy the second one. And I did owner financing with $4,000 from a credit card.
That is so funny because I did the same thing on my fourth purchase. was a dupe. It was an expired listing on the
Mine
MLS.
wasn't expired too.
It was like 1995. It was on Broadway, and I've since sold it to a friend of mine. He still has it. He's murdering it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's doing really well. I had lost all my energy on that one. I'm like, I'm done. He fixed it up, man. He's killing it. Prices went way up over there. That was in Beachview.
Yeah.
But yeah, I bought that with a credit card. I think I maxed it out at $5,000 on cash, and he held a mortgage, and man, it worked out really good.
Yeah. So that's the thing about America is like you can come in with literally none of your own money and buy a property and build wealth with nothing.
That's where credit card debt is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it if you're bad at responsibility though.
Dustin, I do appreciate it. I really do. This was a good podcast. I appreciate it. It was good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
All right, bud.